Thank you, Mr Speaker. Over the years, there have been several maiden speeches that will have inspired people or moved them to tears. This probably won't be one of them. But with luck, you may get a few laughs. Got one already. I have two great-great-great-grandfathers who were members of this House in the early years of our democracy. In preparation for this speech, I did a bit of digging, hoping for some inspiration. One of them was Alfred Saunders. He was quite keen on prohibition, so I struggled to find a lot to agree with there. Universal suffrage, however, I could agree with him on that. And there was one comment in a speech of his that I did find quite pertinent, and I paraphrase, that members of this House should try to only speak when they had something useful to add that improved the knowledge of everyone. I think that's good advice and probably worth repeating. The other ancestor was William Cargill. Well, apparently he wasn't big on talking. He hated Auckland, our capital at the time, and basically just wanted Otago and Southland left alone. It's hardly surprising that Invercargill was named after him and his birthplace. This leaves me with talking about the subject I least like talking about, myself. Firstly, I would like to thank those friends and family who have taken the time to come here today and listen. I would especially like to acknowledge my wife and daughters who, rather than miss out on the first day back at school, are watching on TV, wherever the camera is. It meant a lot to me to have them at my swearing-in at Government House. I figured that occasion was worth missing a day of school. Listening to me prattle on for 15 minutes, not so much. But seriously, I do want to pay a special debt of gratitude to them, because as the other farming members in this House know, you aren't just leaving your family behind during the week to deal with the usual issues that may come up in the family home, but also they get to deal with 1,000 moving parts that make up a working farm, such as the herd breaking into the maize silage crop, which I wish was a hypothetical example, but it's not. That vandalism took place at 1 o'clock this morning. I am truly fortunate that my wife and daughters can support me by handling all of this. This isn't new for them. If it wasn't for my wife, I would not have been able over the years to engage in various forums, be involved in farmer advocacy. I have probably spent more wedding anniversaries at World Dairy Summits with farming colleagues than at home with my wife. So once again, Audra, I am truly grateful for the support you provide to me, and to Michaela and Peyton, thank you for keeping me grounded, helping me recognise my place in the world, which is just below 2 cats, a dog and several pet day calves. I would also like to pay tribute to my parents and brother and sister. It's fair to say it's not till later in life that you really truly appreciate all that your parents have done for you. From my parents, I feel I learnt a couple of important lessons. Farming during the 1980s was not easy. Today, in this House, we are concerned about inflation. But I'm sure my father would love to parody that famous line from Crocodile Dundee. That's not inflation, this was inflation. People nowadays think that dairy farming is an easy get-rich-quick scheme. I can tell you that was not my childhood. 20% interest rates make life hard. But it was a childhood where I learnt all about work ethic and community service, and from the example of my parents who did every role, from school boards to school sports to community service groups and beyond. It would be remiss of me also not to mention my sister and brother. I am thankful that as children, then teenagers and adults, we have stayed close. Given both are in agribusiness, we have run into each other quite a bit over the years in the work settings. So far, just my poor sister has had to sit through a meeting referring to me as minister, through gritted teeth. I'm not sure that my brother will have that same level of control. I'm sorry to them for making their lives so much more awkward because of me choosing to do this. For me, the path to Parliament is not one that I set out on. My education was very much run-of-the-mill state schooling, from Plateau Primary School to Maidstone Intermediate and then to Hiratonga College in Upper Hutt. My classmates were a mix of children whose parents were scientists at Wallaceville, civil servants, tradespeople and even the head of the local mongrel mob. A real melting pot of New Zealand society. From there, aside from thinking I should probably go to university, I still wasn't really set on any path. In fact, the decision of which university to go to was made more on the fact that a visit to Victoria University showed lots of hippie-looking types playing hacky sack, compared to a visit to Massey University, where the uniform of choice was red bands, rugby jersey and track pants, and it was fairly obvious as to what culture was for me. My degree choice of agricultural economics was based more on its likelihood of getting me a spot in the hostels than any particular career interest at that time in ag economics. However, in saying that, I had become very interested in all matters agricultural trade related and international economics. My 3 years doing the degree very much laid the basis for my beliefs around the importance of free markets and that fundamental level of efficiency that will come when you do not interfere and let the market do its thing. It also taught me that when you actually know what you are talking about, you don't need to use big words. You can explain it in simple terms that most people can understand. As I went through my degree, I found that the thing I enjoyed the most about uni was working on the farm during the holidays. After Massey, I spent a year on a farm at mile 47 of the Alaska Highway in British Columbia. This gave me a real appreciation of just how special New Zealand is for farming, and again, the importance of open markets to drive efficiency, not to mention a lifelong dislike of snow. Coming back home in 1997, it was into farming for me. This was a few years into the expansion of dairy farming in New Zealand. The backdrop to my entire farming career has been this whole debate around farming and the environment. I sometimes lament that a lot of the debate seems to be stuck in 1997. Some have a view that things have to change, and I constantly heard over the years that we have to change our farming systems. Newsflash, the difference between my first year of farming and today is like night and day. Farmers are not afraid or reluctant to change. We are constantly looking for better ways to do things. Change is a yearly thing. Every year, I and many other farmers in this country are always trying something new in our farming systems. Some work, some don't. We adopt, we adapt, and it's incremental. Like all good things, they take time. The biggest change I have seen isn't the physical one on the farms, but it's one of the mindset shifts in what many farmers are looking at as to what more they can do. We have seen the growth of catchment groups, and I see dairy farmers talking with pride at how much fencing of waterways they have done. I recall speaking on a farming panel at the World Dairy Summit in Rotterdam. All the other farmers got up and they talked about what they were going to do and maybe they intended to do, whereas I was able to get up and speak about what we had done, all without subsidies, a point that got a few laughs, but probably more grumpy looks from the EU. The biggest risk to further progress is ignoring this change. If the feeling amongst farmers becomes, why do I bother to do all this because there's nothing I'm doing is being recognised, then they will give up. They lose hope, they stop doing. Farming will continue to evolve. We want to encourage that to continue in a way that is sensible, practical and affordable, to quote a former colleague. Early on in my farming career, we moved to fielding and I joined Young Farmers. This led to my first representative role as the Manawatu District Chair and then the Regional Chair. The big thing for me at Young Farmers was being a contestant in the Young Farmer of the Year. I remember watching on TV as a kid wondering how good you must have to be to make it to the grand final, never thinking it was something that I could achieve. Competing in the Young Farmer contest taught me several useful things. Firstly, with all the practical modules. Stop. Look at the problem, identify the issues, think out a plan, what tools do you need, then enact the plan, as opposed to the headless chicken method, which I often see being utilised elsewhere. It was also my introduction to public speaking and the media. This is where I learnt that kicking prattly yards and swearing might make good television, but not necessarily good for the one doing the actual swearing. Making the grand final in 2003 still ranks for me as one of the things I'm most proud of in life. Young Farmers was a place where I also met three current members of this House. a young Tim van der Molen, who was part of a dastardly plot to steal the Martin Young Farmers Club banner, Barbara Kuriger, who was an interview judge in my first regional final, and then Rural Affairs Minister Damien O'Connor when I was on the National Committee. In Young Farmers, I was also the rep to the Provincial Federated Farmers Exec. So when I became old and infirm at the age of 30, it was a natural progression for me. It was a role where I got to be involved in some of the bigger picture issues for farming. My reason for undertaking leadership roles in Young Farmers was a feeling I needed to pay it back for the benefits I gained from the contest. And for Feds, it was about paying it back to a sector and a way of life I enjoyed. Plus, I felt I had something to offer. I would like to acknowledge all my former colleagues from Feds in the gallery, especially Katie Milne, and also, importantly, a few of them that are sitting down here with me today. Mike, Miles, Mark, great to have you here, guys. Thank you all that I connected with over the years in Feds. Thank you for sharing your skills and intelligence. I gained a great experience from you all over the years. My time in Feds has also prepared me for this role, from gaining knowledge around a myriad of issues to trying to find compromise amongst that broad church that is the Fed Farmers National Council, to the most difficult challenge of all, presenting it as select committee and trying to understand what the hell did that question they just asked me mean in English. When I started out in Feds, it was with no real view that I would be the national president. I just did each role, looked at the role above, and felt that I had something to offer, and one step at a time I got there. While some of it has been challenging over the years, the thing that kept me going through it all was all the thank yous and the pats on the back from my community up and down the country. To me, there is no more satisfying conversation than the classic monosyllabical grunt followed by a handshake. That's my sort of chat. And here we are, and just like at Feds, the opportunity presented itself, stars aligned, and I knew I could contribute. And most importantly, I felt I should pay it back to the best country on the planet. While my passion is for all things rural, and while it could be argued if farming is doing well, New Zealand is doing well, there is a bit more to it than that. All of New Zealand needs smart and pragmatic decision making. Rural New Zealand can't pretend problems that happen in towns and cities don't affect us. They do. Yes, we need a regulatory framework that gives farmers the confidence to invest, but every small business in New Zealand needs that. Every single one of us with children needs an education system that will equip our children with the skills they need to succeed on the global stage, and the list goes on. It is a huge privilege to be in this House and to help shape the future for this country of ours, but it also comes with great responsibility to think those decisions through. The responsibility is probably no more evident than by the reefs on the walls around us. Each of those represents a decision made in this House that was paid for by other citizens. Especially poignant for me is the one to my left over there for Alamein. My grandfather served there, was captured, and spent the rest of the war as a POW. The thing I remember the most about my grandfather is his veggie garden. It was huge and meticulously planned out, so that he always had food. He never ever wanted to rely on another human being again for food ever again for the rest of his life. I can barely comprehend what he must have gone through to be so determined on that front. The portfolios I hold and the things we debate may not lead to such historical events as those represented around us. Nonetheless, they can very well lead to huge impacts on individuals if we don't get it right. You may have noticed I do like the odd bit of humour, usually at my own expense, but I do take these roles seriously. Thank you to the ACT Party team, especially David, for believing in me, but mostly thanks for making me feel welcome and truly part of the team, for all the support that has been offered and given from candidates, members and volunteers. Special thanks goes to Mark Cameron. We are able to swap stories of what went wrong on the home ranch each day. Some days Mark gets to feel better, and some days it's me. Today I think it's Mark. Finally, to everyone in this House, I'm here to debate the issues, to put my views and solutions forward. I look forward to playing the ball, not the man or the woman. Thank you for patiently listening to me. I'm assuming this is probably the last time that will happen. But just remember, I am used to shouting instructions to people 2 paddocks away without a microphone. So trying to talk over the top of me might not work. Thank you very much.